The objective of Bangalore Business Literary Fest is to foster and celebrate a culture of writing, reading, and publishing business literature. And we are proud about the fact that this is the only literary fest which is dedicated to business literature. And throughout the day today, we have organized for you some fabulous speakers, some fabulous practitioners, fabulous journalists who would be provoking your thoughts, who would be engaging you, and who would be tapping onto your enthusiasm. So we have takeaways for every kind of stakeholders over here. So we have readers of business literature over here, and we hope to engage them as we are going ahead. We hope to immerse them in the sessions. And we have business educators over here who will be witnessing the dynamics of publishing business literature, who will be witnessing the dynamics of how business is done, how startups are built up. And we have business school students who would learn from the business leaders over here. We have categorized our sessions into broadly 3 different categories. The first one is what you're going to witness over here, which are panel sessions, where we would have a moderator who would be moderating the session and who would be asking questions to the speakers. And then we have open sessions where students as well as executives would be interacting with authors as well as business leaders. And the third, we have several book launches which we have arranged for you. So all in all, it is going to be a fabulous day for us today. And the first session over here is moderated by Raghunathan. Raghu is the CEO of GMR Varalakshmi Foundation. He was earlier the managing director of GMR Industries, the president of ING Vaishya Bank, and he was a professor of accounting and finance at the IIM Ahmedabad. He is one of the celebrated authors in India, primarily writing about the books which most of you would have read: King's Indian's Play, Laws and Mahabharata and Mathematics, Don't Sprint the Marathon, and he also would be having a new book launch today. And he is joined by so over to you, Raghu.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjeev. My distinguished student and the current acting director of IIM Bangalore, Srinivas. Oh my goodness. So, ladies and gentlemen, such a pleasure being here for the second edition of the Bangalore Business Lit Fest. Yesterday, Economic Times was telling us that the country in general and Bangalore in particular has too many lit fests, but I think their focus was essentially on fictional lit fests. Business lit fest, this is perhaps the only one of its kind, and that's precisely the reason, because in India, actually going by the size of the market, business literature is as big as the fiction literature, and yet lit fests are almost always about the literary authors. While most of the entrepreneurs, most young executives, most aspiring young professionals tend to read as much of non-fiction as it will be fiction. So that's the context which Sangeet has already set forth. Now last time, our focus was essentially on non-fiction, books and authors. This time the focus is more in terms of entrepreneurship. So that's the focus that we are giving it. But before I proceed, and before I introduce my wonderful panel here, all of whom are very, very personal friends, so I'm likely to go a tad overboard introducing them. But that apart, first and foremost, I would like to thank Srinivas, the director of the institute. I would like to thank Colonel Rabir Singh, the chief administrative officer at IMB, who's been most cooperative in making the premises available alongside the NSR cell, which is where we are being hosted. We have been helped by a whole lot of other people. Mr. Manoj Chakravarti, the IMB Center for Corporate Governance and Citizenship. We have a publisher sponsor in Sage Publishing. We have a gift sponsor in Thai food, all those fancy emulsions that we drink, at least I like them. So, media partner is yourstory.com. Technology sponsor is GoodWorks Labs. TV sponsor is Author TV. Live webcast is Link Street. And knowledge partner is Knowledge at Wharton. So I think we have a pretty distinguished list of sponsors. And for a second edition, that isn't doing too bad. So thank you all. Thank you very much for making this happen. And of course, the internal team, I'm a ceremonial fellow on the real work has been done by Benedict and his team, that's named really. Okay, now from this panel, which is about a business case for reading. You see, all three of them are very, very close to me in more ways than one. Manish here is actually for the last 15 odd years my closest friend and a person whom I have enormous respect for the simple reason, at least in my life, he's the best read person that I know. And he has this habit of overwhelming me with some amazing books. Some of the best books I have read are all gifted by Manish. And last but not the least, he is probably among the largest employers in the private sector, TPs, which employs something on the order of 120,000 employees. So that's the kind of sector that he actually created an industry which didn't exist until then, and one of the largest players in that segment, that is Manish. This fellow who's looking distinctly, what should I call it, entrepreneurial in his jeans and kids and so on, only the black t-shirt is missing. He is the son of a very good friend of mine, Samir Barua, who was an entrepreneur for a number of years, and who happened to graduate from IMD with gold medal. And 1 month after he had joined Bain and Company, I asked him, how do you find the job? He said, this is not what I want to do with my life. And I said, that's the problem with your generation. You haven't been there 1 month and you're beginning to tell me this is not what you want to do with your life. But sure enough, 2 years later he quit, set up Delivery, playing on Delhi and Delivery. Started with a completely unexciting idea, but obviously as bright people do, they modify the plans as they go along. And in 5 years flat, they employ 16,000 employees today, giving the likes of Blue Dart and DLC a run for their money. And obviously the timing, piggybacking on the e-tailing and so on, was a matter of timing, was a matter of strategy. And one of the biggest employers today of big data analytics, who do researches of the kind where, how do you fine tune whether or not this particular client is likely to return the goods? What time of the day should you service those who are very regular versus those who are not regular? What time should the delivery man leave the premises to optimize the total time across the entire circuitry and so on? So they have people employed from NASA and so on. So big data analytics is one of the biggest going things in delivery. And and the last claim to fame is he adopted 6 stray dogs. The first is called Jay, second is Viru, third is Gabbar, fourth is Samba, Mosi and Basanti. So that tells you about the guy, how nutty you have to be to make it as an entrepreneur. You can't be a normal human being. Okay? Most importantly, I have a very, very close friend, Ashish Goel, a hedge fund manager. I must share a little bit of story because when you get to know people, you sync with them better. Ashish, I first interviewed when I was heading ING Vaishya Bank. I used to make it a point to recruit the management trainees myself. Ashish had taught the written test, and it took me exactly 3 minutes to decide that I want him when he came into the room for the interview. And I asked him, with your challenge, how are you going to deal with the world? He said, sir, as long as anything is on a computer terminal, I use a synthesizer and then I'm as good as him. And he was as good as his word. So I told him that, look, that if I put you on a Reuters screen, which is all about a screen, you could be a trader. He said, yeah, sure, why not? Then I told him, look, since your parents are in Mumbai, shall I post you in Mumbai? And that is where he won my heart. He said, sir, I have a long life ahead of me. I have to be independent of my parents sometime or other. The sooner the better. This is not what I hear from most candidates whom I interview. Oh, my aunt is in Delhi, I want a job in Delhi. My parents are in Mumbai, I want a job in Mumbai. No nonsense. And he became a star trader, became the manager of treasury. I had the honor of being his referee at Kellogg, Wharton. Passed out with the Dean's Medal from Wharton. Joined the JP Morgan. When everybody was sad, he wasn't sad. And today, he's just moved from one hedge fund to the other hedge fund. If entrepreneurship is about risk taking, you will not find too many risk takers. That's what he is. So he may not be entrepreneur in the same sense as my friend Manish or Sahil, but he is an entrepreneur with a difference. That's the reason I brought him here. So that's it. That's the panel here. And again, Ashish reads more than I do. So that's another reason I have him here. Because often we say I don't have time. This guy is able to read more with his visual challenge. We have fewer excuses. Right. So I'm going to start with a few random questions with all of them. And very soon, after the first 15-20 minutes, I will essentially leave the questions to all of you. Okay. All right. Youngest fellow first. Yeah. Nice. Hi, Mukesh. Come. Well, Mukesh was our fourth panelist who just joined us. I mean, if you talk about most interesting startups, whether it's Myntra or Flipkart or CureFit, you have the man here, right? So, and these are all guys who actually don't need much introduction, So one doesn't need to go through the whole story and then say they need no introduction. So I will cut the story short and move on. Right. So we are just talking about the session, which is the business case on reading. I was going to ask Sahil, what kind of books were you reading when you were growing up? When you thought you were studying law?
A whole bunch of things. Hi. What kind of things was I reading when I was growing up? Largely, my parents wanted me to read classics. As I grew older, I read a lot of fiction. Started off by obviously reading a lot of science fiction. Every novel at the time was anti-classical. Then through college, read again mainly fiction. And as I sort of gotten into work, been reading a lot more non-fiction, a lot more biographies, a lot more business books.
So which biography has made a connect with you in the context of your becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I don't read biographies about people from the world of business. My favorite biography is the biography of Paul Harrison, the physicist. And it's a book called The Strangest Man. That's more.
Okay. So does that mean you consciously avoid books on successful entrepreneurs and businessmen?
I don't consciously avoid them, I just don't. I think they're hard to read. They're very hard to read because I think they glorify the successes of people who are about it. And it's only a part of the story. It's more fun to read about who are not really in business. That's what I know.
Manish, you agree with him?
I read both, so I wouldn't agree completely. I think as much as Emil Ludwig's biography of Napoleon was very important for me growing up, but I think Steve Jobs' biography, or Walter Isaacson, or Amazon's Brad Stone, the Everything Store. At least for me, I'm running the biggest company I've ever run every year for the last 10 years, right? And that's true for most of us entrepreneurs. And nobody really teaches you. I hadn't run a 50 crore company, I hadn't run a 500 crore company, I've never run a 3,000 crore company, which I'm running this year. So I think there are three ways to learn. You're learning from other people, from your experiences, and by pissing on an electric fence. I think most of us entrepreneurs learn the third way the most. But I think I've learned a lot from business backgrounds, so I may have a different perspective. But I have learned, of course, you have to be careful with which business. Hagiographies tend to be more common in business than they do outside business. But I think business biographies for me have, as an entrepreneur, there are two kinds of companies you can create: a baby and a dwarf. A baby and a dwarf are both small, but the baby is going to grow and the dwarf is going to stay there. The difference between a baby and a dwarf is not more food; it's in DNA, right? So, at least from my perspective, the companies that I've admired, Alibaba or Amazon or Apple or Elon Musk, for that matter, are people whom I do belong.
But tell me what, as a youngster, whatever you read in your early years, teen years, or late teen years, or early 20s and so on, was there any book that stuck inside your mind which played a role in your turning on entrepreneur, or it is accidental?
I think it would be Emil Ludwig's Napoleon. I thought that was a great book
That's
about
very
it.
interesting, because that's exactly what I quote everywhere as my first book at taking.
I think a civil service, the gifts and wounds of a civil service parent, right? The wounds of a civil service parents are risk aversion. But the gifts are that you learn early in life that you don't live in an economy, you live in a society. So I grew up reading a lot of history, a lot of political science, a lot of economics, just because, and particularly being born and brought up in Kashmir, I think that's also sort of in your face, right? The importance of a society rather than an economy, which warden MBAs like us tend to think we live in an economy. But hopefully we get over that.
Usually it's often said that a prerequisite for entrepreneurship is that you should have a fancy degree. Because a fancy degree is basically the chains on your feet to entrepreneurship. Because you have to give up a lot. How did it work? Because almost all of you are, you have amazing qualifications, but you're all entrepreneurs in one way or other.
I mean, I am Bangalore and Wharton are good places to be at, but they're better places to be from. So fundamentally, the value is being from. I am Bangalore. No, I think that's important. I think in a life with, how do you trust somebody, asymmetric information? I think there could be various explanations for how do you trust somebody. So education is exciting for about 5-10 minutes. After that, what can you do? But yes, you do have an unfair advantage being from I am Bangalore when you're pitching to a venture capitalist. I think. And you should use all the unfair advantages you can, right? So
Every advantage fair or not?
So, strategy is the art of creating unfair advantages.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Ashish. When did you start reading seriously?
So, unlike Anish and Samir, I actually, Sahib. I grew up, as a teenager, I was losing my sight. So I actually did not read anything till I was 22 years old. In fact, I still remember trying to read one page when I was 17, and it took me 9 or 10 or 12 minutes while everybody else would finish it in 1 minute. So started reading at the age of 22, and I realized how much I had lost out in life. it happened so that technology started changing when I was 22. I got introduced to screen reading softwares, and now I can use an iPhone like anybody else, in fact sometimes better. But the iPhone was the most inaccessible phone in the world 7 years ago. People hate Steve Jobs with a lot of emails. So 22, 23 is when I started reading.
And which book has really stayed with you?
So I actually love reading biographies, and I get attracted to successful people, but I get attracted to humble, successful people. And I also get attracted a lot to underdogs, fighters, because I think my whole life has been as an underdog, everywhere I've been. So the three...
Today you look like one alpha male.
That's just the water limit. The three biographies stand out to me for various reasons. One is Lee Kuan Yew, the guy who made Singapore. The other is Steve Jobs, because he did something really life-changing for a lot of people. The third is the tennis player, Rafael Nadal, who people would not think of as reading his biographies on the first issue, but it ends when he's 26, so he's 32 now. But by the time he's 26, he's got so many life experiences and he's become a champion already. And how he was always the underdog, how he fought his way through. And one of the lines that stands out for me is, if you make an excuse one day of your life, you'll make an excuse every day of your life. So don't make an excuse ever.
Thank you. Yes, Mukesh, I'm going to start the same way. What book really made a difference to you, especially in your becoming an author?
I think it's very difficult to pinpoint one particular book. Right? When I look at books, reading each book is an experience, and a little bit of that book stays with you. You realize what ways and it all comes together. So when you are going through a process of reading a book, it's a bit of self-reflection time. You come across some inspiring stories. You can trigger some ideas. Usually, some new information, it will again trigger pursuits of something new and interesting. So difficult to specifically pinpoint. But few books in this come to mind which have made a significant impression. I think one is way back in college days. I think most of us will in the room would have read the Sam Walton's Made in America. That was when the second or third year. But that was the first time I got an idea about I guess what's today called 0 to 1. The whole art and science and hustle and everything of building something from scratch, just starting with a dream and then being at it. I think that's probably, crystallized my thoughts about basically pursuing a career in entrepreneurship. And pretty much, the first 2 years out of college, I've either worked on my own companies or at least startups. I think other book, that I keep going back to every 5 years is called, Gun Jumps and Steel, Jared Diamond. It just, has a very profound impression. I've read it 3 times now in the past 15 years. It kind of tracks the entire journey of humanity from 40,000 years ago till now, and touches upon some of the big pivotal moments which have shaped the world as it is. It's a whole theme. I think it's a recurring theme for me. I keep going back to books of that genre. I think it just helps build a larger perspective. I feel whatever you're doing, as an entrepreneur or a player or people who achieve a lot, all of it is on the backdrop of much larger stage, which is the world as it is today. So somewhere I feel, understanding that also potentially gives one an unfair advantage. If you understand, what arena you are playing in, what rules, how the rules come to be, how people function, etc. That theme is, I find it particularly attractive.
Could you tell us what are you reading currently?
Yeah, a number of things. I just recently finished, so biography is a common theme. So I like Walter Isaacson's biographies. In fact, last couple of months I read both Benjamin Franklin's biography and the Wright brothers. Wright is I think David McCullough, but that's the fascinating read. These two guys, classic, underdogs. They were basically they had a bicycle repair shop somewhere in Ohio, and at that time, the late 1800s, the whole dream of building a flying machine was in the air. Right? No, yeah, exactly. Really, and in fact, they bootstrap everything. You know, everything was funded by themselves. Their first few prototypes were 100% self-funded, and it's just a story of a big dream and then absolute dogged determination, and basically kept at it. And they're competing with a lot of world famous, you know, kind of so-called aviators because no one is really flying, but well-funded, lot of government money, etc. And these guys barely with just few $100. I was going to say few $100 million. Also used just few $100. You can imagine, you know, they built the world's first flying machine. And to his point, genuinely humble guys, you know, absolute gentlemen, you know, knowers about themselves, you know, lived all their life in a very modest way, but in some ways, you know, completely changed the world, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, you seem to a similar question. You had a variety of takes. I want to ask another question. Any one of you, or each one of you, could take a call. Supposing somebody approaches you today and says, I want to write a book on you, what you have achieved as of today as an entrepreneur. Would you agree to it, or would you say wait another 10 years?
I'll say wait another 50 years, you know. I think world is a fascinating place. There are a lot of people doing, you know, world-changing things. I think for anyone's story, I think some historian, I've forgotten, but he said, you know, it's the best way to judge a life is to, like, after a lot of distance, a lot has happened, you know, all things to be very temporary, you know, may look very exciting. So I very strongly feel, you know, biography should be written either after a person is dead or after retired from whatever doing for 10 years, and you retrospect. The person has the time to reflect a lot, as well as, you know, whatever the person might have done. I think time will really judge, you know, whether it was something really meaningful, worthwhile. So, no, absolutely, no, I will completely run in opposite direction.
Manish, you? I thought I'm going to come back. No, not yet. I think your statement that they have to be modest, humble guys is being taken too seriously. Oh, that's it. All right. Yes, when?
Not now, not later.
Not now, not later. Well, now if we had successful stories as humble as this, we'll never get a biography written. That's really what it means. Okay. Which means somebody will have to write it, you kicking screen from secondary sources. All right. Tell me, Manish, what book would you recommend? One book that you want to recommend to the young generation today, professional class of youngsters. What book would you recommend? One book.
Business book or?
No fiction.
I would think the most influential book for me has been Strategy by Lawrence Friedman. It's the history of strategy. So it's a military historian, and 1/3 of the book is obviously military history and political history. And a very small part of the book is business history, because he says, you know, business history is relatively recent. But just think, all of us think about strategy a lot, but we haven't synthesized what it means. I mean, and it boils down to, is luck or skill more important in life? You know, does strategy matter? Is being in the right place at the right time more important than doing what you do? And I think strategy for me sort of synthesized those issues about how much luck, how much skill, and finally he comes to the conclusion that strategy is about narratives. You know, Maya Angelou was a poet. She said that the universe isn't made of atoms, it's made of stories. It sort of seemed to me, when we write our business plans, or, you know, it's a story, right? It is genuinely a story. And so for me, strategy as a book put it all together in terms of thinking about when you thought about military strategy, you have objectives, you have goals, how do you get there? And then that morphed into political strategy, and now we sort of think business strategy. But most of what we think about in business has already been thought about in either the political economy or in the context of in crosswinds.
Does it ever happen that when really folks with a very complex situation, you tend to go back to a book just in case there may be some nuggets hiding around to help you navigate?
I'm not sure it's that explicit, but yeah, I mean, I read a lot, so I think hopefully it gets embedded somewhere inside, right? It's more sleeper cells in your head than active sort of dictionary math.
Sahil, one book.
Never asked the question. I don't think it's fair to actually recommend one book to anyone.
No, this is not about fairness. I am in the driving seat and I ask the question.
I would recommend everyone to read as much as they can, but
Someone who has not read, you want to get the person initiated into the fun of reading, what book would you recommend as one who has read a lot?
well, if you're looking, the book that I go back to very often is actually, when I go back to the book called The Remains of the Day, which is it's an old book about it's an exploration of what constitutes personal dignity. And it's essentially a story of an English butler who serves a lord who is cahoots with the Nazis and he thinks he's doing the right thing. And the butler at some point realizes that he was a party to being the service of someone who was fascist. Over time, it's a question of how he explores his role in this conflict that happens the manner, and how he questions looking back to the role, whether he should have done the right thing. And I find myself going back to that very often.
Okay.
I'm very sorry to intervene here. We're not able to listen to all our audience. Very
Do you want me to say that again?
Yes. If not all of it, maybe the name of the book.
The book is The Remains of the Day. It's an old book by Japanese British.
Yeah. Ashish?
Can I answer your previous question?
Yeah.
For the last 5 years, I've been facing a lot of pressure to write a book already by my friends and family actually. I've been resisting it. I still remember when I was graduating from Wharton and I had broken into Wall Street as the first blind trader when we were being chosen by Wall Street. The Wall Street Journal wanted to interview me as their front page, and I just flatly refused. And I said, no, this is my life. I want to just live my life. I don't want to be famous or anything. And my dad called me from India and he said, listen, this is not for you. This is for other people. And if you can inspire one person with that interview, forget 1,000, you'll be fine. So do that. Eventually, the New York Times followed me and all that. But so I will write a book. In fact, when I changed my last job from JP Morgan to my previous hedge fund, Lucas, I went away to Totley Barton in Devon in UK. I live in London. So 7 days without internet, without cell phone. I just did a writing course. Because I thought I would start writing my book. I wrote 12,000 words in 7 days. And I still have it. It's a bank. I'm making a bank out of it. And probably 10 years down the line, I will write a book. Or I'll get a course started writing.
Ashish, as someone who has written 15 books, I have an advice. Books don't happen 10 years hence. They happen when you write regularly a couple of hours every day. Do that now, okay? So don't wait for all the beautiful pieces to fall in place. All right? You want to say something? Otherwise, yeah, go ahead.
So I don't intend to write many books. I just want to write one book because I also know there's definitely one reader of that book, my mother. I don't know about other people. So, and going to your second question about which book would I recommend, I will talk about my industry. So we get thrown a lot of trading books and all these market wizards and all these great people like Soros and Tudor and all these. The one book that sticks out to me from understanding what investing is all about is not Warren Buffett or Benjamin Graham or anything. It's called The Reminiscence of a Stock Operator. And it's probably the best book I've read in my life in terms of my business. And I think I highly recommend that book. It's a very simple, basic book about how you should think about investing.
Oh, wonderful. Mukesh, what one book will you recommend today?
To Sahil's point, I think it's very dangerous to recommend one book. So I'll probably speak something very, very practical, which there's this book called Managing Your Day-to-Day. It's a very short, 120 page, but really a lot of useful tip, right? You know, to think about all of us, the most precious commodity we have is time, and we can use time in infinite number of ways. So having some structure system that's personalized, works for you, reflects who you are. This book has bunch of useful tips. So there's also one book I'll go back to whenever I feel I'm not productive or not getting enough out of time. So worth checking it out.
And tell me, all of you, how do you take time out for reading? How do you steal time from your busy schedules? Yeah, anyone? Yeah.
So here actually I have an advantage over everybody else because everybody needs to look at a screen to read or a book to read. My iPhone keeps me reading the book on the Kindle app while I'm shaving or I'm doing my yoga or anything else.
Wonderful.
I actually read every day.
So you're able to steal time more effectively than most.
I actually end up reading a lot on the plane and car, taxi, so that's, yeah, I think when the most time which is typically idle time, I think flights are good time. You go to Delhi, you can easily get 4 hours of reading time, 4 hours both ways, right? So that's enough for a book.
Absolutely. This particularly Manish, you are always like a reader. And you probably read very fast.
But reading isn't homework. I read in office. I mean, it's work.
Yeah.
I
That's what. Yeah, I agree.
Everything gets cancelled. I don't read book. I
Exactly.
read. So for me,
Absolutely.
and because I mean, I think art, at least now my job, and since I have a CEO, a colleague who's a CEO. I mean, my job is thinking. So I spend a lot of time reading. Just in it.
So time is not an issue.
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Right.
it's not, at least not.
Good. Sahil?
Likewise, I read in office, I read at home. The point is, I think you get into the habit. And I went through a 2-year phase where I actually did lose the habit for a while. And it was quite uncomfortable because I realized that I hadn't read anything at all over 2 years.
Right, sure.
You become a less intelligent person. But then I just realized that you can't use the excuse and say, I don't have the time to read. I think you make a choice about how you want to learn and what you want to learn.
Now, one thing is very clear. Neither reading nor anything else in life is about spurts activities. These are usually a way of life. And procrastination is almost always a hindrance to discipline. So obviously, so you have to keep doing it. Now, before I throw the panel open to the entire house, and Manish will agree with me because we both have appreciated some books which are on strategy but are fictional works. For instance, if you have read Cuckold, the book is only about strategy, though it talks about Meera cuckolding her husband because she is in love with Lord Krishna. So she looks at her husband as a cuckold, but that is set in the kingdom of Mewar and the Rajasthan politics and so forth. One of the finest readable books that you will ever read on strategy is Cuckold. On leadership, there's a beautiful book called King Rat. What was the guy's name? James Clavell, who has written most of his books on the Far East, Japan, China, Korea, and that kind of a setting. This King Rat is one amazing book. These Americans are prisoners of war under Japanese occupation in one of the Japanese islands. And the Japanese are giving them a very hard time. And in the prison, a parallel economy of sorts develops. For instance, if you are unwell and if you want some medicine, the medicine has to be smuggled in. You want to write a surreptitious note to somebody outside, you want pen, you want ink, and so on. So, and somebody wants cigarettes. Now, what can you give in return to be able to get some cigarettes? So there is this parallel economy that develops, and a corporal, he is extremely good at, working very closely with all the security guards and so on. He is very good at smuggling things in and out. He can send things out. Somebody has a fancy fountain pen. He would take that and supply him 20 cigarettes if required and so forth. And he is the one, and a colonel and brigadiers are making his coffee and tea for him because in a prison system where they can give nothing else in return, would say, all right, you make my tea while I'm busy with this or that and so on. Then what happens is they want to make a transistor, so they want various components, a telephone receiver, some wires, and some diodes and so on. And he is able to organize all the components, and the transistor is ready. When the transistor is ready, there is an announcement in the transistor towards the end of the book that the Second World War has ended. And that is the time the colonel is pouring hot water into the tea of this corporal. And the moment he hears that the war has ended, he throws the tea at the corporal's face. The war has ended, I am the colonel, you better salute me. So this is a beautiful book on leadership under formal conditions versus leadership under informal conditions. And very often we look at only a Manish is a leader, or only a Sahil is a leader, or only a Mukesh is a leader in the organization. But obviously that is not true. Every professional is a leader in his own right. And this book actually brings that element. So one can be an entrepreneur not necessarily by being a promoter. One can be an entrepreneur. One can have a spirit of entrepreneurs even in whatever you do. For example, doing your work in an entrepreneurial spirit. So,
no, I just wanted to build on your theme to say that some of the best business books are not really business books, right? The best books about mergers and alliance and strategic partnerships is the biography of the Duke of Marlborough by Winston Churchill. I mean, one of the most interesting books of creativity is Agony and Ecstasy by Irving Stone, which is the biography of Michelangelo. I think, frankly, the best book about economics about India, political economy, is India After Gandhi by Ram. Yeah. Right? I think most of us sort of think about the most interesting question about India is why is India poor, and that's not coming to you from an economics book. It's going to come to you from India.
History, yeah. All right. Unless you have any closing remarks to make, we will throw the panel open to the house. Yes. What are the favorite subjects that you read? I thought in some ways it was covered, when some said, yeah, what subjects? Okay. Go ahead. Yes, Ashish.
I love reading.
I thought somebody will ask that.
I love reading about history and culture. So when I read a Murakami or I read a Odante, it's not because I want to read fiction. I want to understand what the Japanese psyche is, or what the Turkish psyche is, or the Mexican psyche is. And that, for me, in this globally integrated world is very important because we come from so many different backgrounds, we interact with each other. And it's very important to know where people are coming from. In fact, I'm reading a book, only read it halfway through. It's called The Silk Route. It comes from the history of the world from the Mediterranean and Eastern side of the world rather than the European and American side. It's fascinating to read about history and culture.
Fantastic. Mukesh?
I think for me, my favorite subjects are just to read, mostly non-fiction. I think, probably 90% of what I read is non-fiction. I was trying to take mental notes on the books the panel mentioned about some of these fiction books, but so history is by far the most favorite. I think it's just what has happened last 2,000 years or 10,000 years is immensely fascinating. I think everything in some ways has been said and done. In fact, just this year, I also read India After Gandhi, and now I thought I learned so much more about India. So history is one. I think economics, politics, and then science. Science is a lot more about. And there, I can get pretty geeky, nerdy. I will have to read, as much as I'm able to follow, because in a lot of ways, I feel science in some ways is going to build, next 10, 20, 50 years of future. So just knowing that, I think just a balance of the two, I find, gives me a certain perspective and at least it works for me.
Great. Sahil? And then Manish.
My favorite theme changes every year. This year the theme is on technology. So I come from the media biography of Alan Turing to understand how modern computing.
Seen the movie?
Yes. So this year's theme is technology. What I like reading about though is understanding how the fundamental building blocks of modern technology came to be versus reading about what's going on in the world.
Fantastic. Manish?
I I completely agree with him that the theme sort of reflects what is going on in the rest of my life. Right now, I'm reading a lot about sort of poverty and economic development. I think to me the most fascinating question is why is India poor? Right? I landed for my MBA in the US in August '94. By September, I was asking myself, these Americans are smarter than us, why are they richer than us? Surely I can kick their butt individually, but why does Joe Sixpack, who drinks beer and watches college football, make $50,000 a year, and why does Ram Bharose make 50,000 rupees a year? It's got nothing to do with Ram Bharose. The productivity is embedded in the air. So to me, one of the most fascinating things right now is really just economic development. So why nations fail, why the West wins for now, those kind of stuff, right?
Great. Yes, ma'am.
How do you pick your book? How do
I
you
will
select
send
it?
this out, so I will pass this around.
I'll just stand up, maybe you can hear me.
Okay. Yeah, loud enough.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, how do you pick your books? Is it recommendations? Do you look at reviews? Sometimes you come across very good books just by chance, yeah? So, do you have any?
Yes, gentlemen. Your panel. Manish?
A combination. Obviously, I keep track of what people who read a lot keep reading, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's either through, I find the Financial Times, the Economist, and the New York Review of Books, and the Times Literary Supplement, which Ram told me to subscribe to.
See, for me it's very easy, I depend on him.
I think it's, one of the saddest things for me is bookshops going away. I think
Yes.
the serendipity of running into something which you need to read but don't know you need to read
Yeah.
is much harder to find online or through book reviews, because there's obviously an element of self-selection or adverse selection in book reviews. So I think bookstores are, that's why, just going to London, I beg people to send me there, because the ability to sort of 5 or 10 bookstores and walk around and find something that you need to read but don't know. But otherwise, the second best substitute is probably people who read a lot.
One other response on the same question, which is a different take on the question. Anybody? All right. Somebody else?
Apparently, the light doesn't look good, just not come to
That's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that may be easy.
Just appears that one has to.
I think we'll share this.
That's okay.
Take it, take it.
Thanks. So it just appears that if one has to read a lot, so either one has to be a CEO like Manish or entrepreneurs like the folks around. But in my job, if I'd like to read a book, probably the next book I'll have to read it from home on. So in terms of allotting more time to read, as you said, it was kind of a habit, which we understand. So it cannot happen on an ad hoc basis. Right? So that's one part of it. Second, the question to the panelists. So all of you mentioned that you go back to a specific book or set of books. So when you encounter a scenario in your business, so can you elucidate a scenario wherein you were kind of going through a rough patch or a phase, you got back to a book, so that kind of helped you bounce back?
Yeah. To me, it actually happened. And Napoleon was my comeback book. I got 47% marks in BSc first year. And I was 14 years old because I was way ahead of my age. And I said, oh my God, what am I going to do at this rate? And that is when accidentally I happened to read Napoleon by Emil Ludwig, the wonderful historian, who had written the whole book in present tense. And they would talk about how Napoleon would catch a nap sitting on the horseback and so on. I said, if one guy can catch a nap like that, so can I. So I think it really made a difference. Of course, not in an entrepreneurial sense. I'm talking about early teen years and so on. It made a big difference. But anybody else with a better story? Yeah. You can keep this.
So this thing that my job doesn't allow me to read. I think, like I said, Rafael Nadal said that you make an excuse one day, make an excuse every day. I read 12 hours for work every day, mainly around geopolitics and events of the world, because anything that China does affects the American markets, anything that Brazil does affects India, whatever, in a very funny, complicated way. But if once you get into the habit, any moment you get, you start reading. So I think it's easy. You don't have to be at home and shut out everybody and your television and everything else and read. So that I don't agree with, first of all. Secondly, for me it's the same book, Reminiscence of a Stock Operator. There's one thing that happened. I mean, when you're investing in the markets, you're either long or you're short. But one big thing that comes back to me again and again is that having cash and zero investments is a position to have. And a lot of people forget that. And sometimes there are market conditions where you absolutely don't want to touch it, you don't want to do anything with it, whether it's going up or down. And you have to keep going back to the basics and read read a book and think about it again and say, okay, this is that market condition. So yeah, there have been situations where I've gone back to a book and picked up things.
Sort of, how much of a dependency is there on, non-fiction business literature books that, sort of, that's a business leader will definitely have to depend on a book, and without a book, reading a book, a specific book or something, getting an idea out of a literature around business, they cannot move ahead. Now, I'm sure entrepreneurs like Sahil and Bansal, so they wouldn't have wanted to read a particular book because they had their own ideas and they wanted to, go on a separate path rather than a one treaded already by somebody else, right? So, just to understand, what is the dependency on the business books?
Dependency is beautifully summed up in one statement. There's no difference between those who do not read and those who cannot read. What's the difference? No, I say this very deliberately because I've come across executives, if you ask them, when did you last read an article relating to your work? In the last 5 years, they would not have one article that related to their work that they might have read. Reading is not a big culture.
Let me try a different angle. I think to my mind, it's not about when you have trouble do you read a book, and finally life is not the solving of the sum, it's the painting of a picture, right? We have trouble every day. I mean, it's not going to be a specific, but it's resilience which we're looking for in life, right? It's a sort of dial tone of your ability to recognize that you're not, these problems aren't personal, these problems aren't pervasive, these problems aren't permanent. And I think that's really for me what books do. I don't think you can say that yesterday my stock tanked 25% and therefore I'm going to go and figure out what other CEOs did when their stock tanked 25%. At least my view of the world is that it's about resilience, it's about over time. That's why you have to have diversity in readings. I'm only at 1 in 5 or maybe 1 in 8 in fiction. I'm trying to change that because I think fiction captures the complexity of the world better than non-fiction does. But my sense is it's not about which book you go to when you have trouble. It's about your inventory, your sleeper cells, and what all you have in your head over time. I think that it would be very hard for us to point out, or at least for me to point out, which specific book is the go-to book for which specific situation. And I'm not sure that's what reading is about anyway, right?
At least from a non-fiction sense, you should have got that option.
You have continue. Okay.
At least in the non-fiction space, so unlike reading a fiction on a plane, you need some dedication and commitment and the focus to read a particular book so that you gain something out of it.
You're saying non-fiction is harder to read than fiction? I know a lot of people would disagree with you here. Is non-fiction harder to read than fiction?
At least from my perspective it is. So if I look at, I'm currently reading 2 books. So one is Tinderbox by M.J. Akbar, the other one is Breakthrough Company by Keith McFarland. So when I read through Tinderbox, it's okay to flip through the pages as I'm in a conversation or watching a television, but not necessarily when I look into the details in a book like Breakthrough Company by Keith McFarland. So that's...
Well, I think you answered your own question, right? Fiction is harder for him to read than non-fiction. It's probably harder for me then. So it'll probably be different for different people, but...
All right, thanks.
Yes. After you read a book, you take notes, discuss it,
Do you take notes?
See, actually I have struggled with this a lot. I have tried various things. For a brief period, I tried to take notes and all of that, but I think for me, it completely kills the joy of reading. I think what I have come to realize is, I think it's more like, watching a movie or watching a performance. If you can be in the moment, I guess the difference between movie and a book is you can, stop any time, have time to reflect, or still anyway, most people will not read a book in one sitting. So you have a, time, you may read it over 10 sittings, right? So I think, brain processes whatever you are reading in a different way. So that's why some of the book stays with you without applying very conscious effort or taking notes. So personally, what I have realized is that once I read a book, some of it will stay with me. I have no idea in future how it will come back, how to connect ideas, etc. So I'm starting thinking of reading more of as entertainment. In fact, to other question also, and I will say, if you're struggling reading a book, it's probably not the right book for you. I don't think it really matters, fiction, non-fiction. A book is more about, as Manish said, fiction also captures the complexity of the world in a very unique, creative way. So, you're always learning. Something about fiction is also in many ways describing real world, real people, what happens in their life. So, I guess, for me it's more about just enjoying the experience and let it become part of your life, right? You don't over-synthesize what you're getting out of it, translate into practical tips or lessons.
I don't do anything after the book, but it took me, in the last 10 years ago, I called my mother and said, one of the scars you gave me was don't write in books. I have started mutilating books and marking them up and pencil and this, that, because it's just, you don't do it later. But for the first 20 years, my mother's image used to come saying, don't write inside the book. But now I called her and said, now I am defaulting and I'm going to be doing this. So for me, I find that while reading the book, it's more important to sort of mark it up in all the ways that the parts that resonate with you rather than wait till the end.
I have a very strange habit, which is very, very old. I write reviews of the books that I read. And so, no. On a personal, I actually type out a large review of every book that I read and keep track of what I'm reading. It's an old habit which dates back to school. It's like, it can take any amount of, there are reviews which are still unfinished, but typically anywhere from about a day to about 4 days, depending on what I'm reading. But it's an old habit. Part of the reason is to capture what I felt about what I was reading at that point in time. While of course, part of the joy of reading is just being immersed in the experience, I think it's important to also capture the feeling you had and why you read what you did. And the joy of it is you can go back in time and look at thousands of reviews that you've written and think about what you were thinking at that time, what you felt at that time.
And one of the things not really well known about Sahil is he writes so well. I honestly would give my right hand to have this class. That is an amazing writer.
There's a funny story. In IIM Bangalore, we were asked to submit book reviews in 2 courses. The unfair advantage I had was that I simply pulled them out of a repository versus actually having to do anything with them.
What's the proportion of e-books that you guys read? Did you read Kindle? Do you read your books on?
I have the shortest answer, so 0. It's not on a book if I can't read it.
So Kindle is not there.
No.
Exact reverse. I think 100% on Kindle. I think if you can imagine, like basically taking your entire library with you, on Kindle or phone, I think it's just phenomenal. So yes, I don't miss, kind of feeling of physically holding a book. But I think for me, Kindle has just been absolutely transformative. I can't, live without my Kindle. There are times where, I would leave my Kindle on a plane, and then on the taxi, all I'm going to figure out, how quickly can I get the nearest Kindle. And I've had people who do stuff to make sure I have Kindle back in my hand in a few hours. So I can't live without one. And that, I hope no one from Flipkart is here.
No, I'm somewhere in between. I'm a Kindle refugee. I gave it up because I need the bookmark to move to the right to make progress. That percentage just doesn't do it for me. And I need unread books to mark me next to my bed. Because Kindle tends to be like my documents, right? You keep buying books and then you read them eventually. So, but obviously I'm somewhere in between. For traveling, there's no question that carrying the Kindle is that much better.
I have a small point. All of you were talking about successful people's, biographies and other things. What about the unsuccessful people? Because what I see is, successful people, there is nothing for you to innovate and do improvement upon that. But unsuccessful people, there are a lot of stories that you can at least try your to improve upon that. And the other thing I always used to feel was, we always talk about Bill Gates and all those big personalities. We are a country of 1.2 billion people, and a variety of people from all strata of society. There are a lot of interesting stories across our countryside to our ideas to these things. So why nobody takes pain to at least listen to their stories and bring it to the media and, so that we can all enjoy. And the last point is my colleague's interesting observation that he's always reading because the iPhones and Kindles is making him listen to these stories always. So I am always feeling whether can we all turn blind because now since we are seeing the world every minute, that's why we are not getting time to read books. So at least for some time let us all close our eyes and maybe try the schemes that he was trying, which could make our life much more interesting. Thanks.
But yeah, that's one thing is true. If you are excessively fond of golfing, socializing, partying, reading will take a toll. So anything in life has a small price to pay. And there is no substituting it. And regarding failure, in fact my book, Don't Sprint the Marathon, is about examples of people who failed earlier, but who, even our education system doesn't teach students how to learn something. Very few schools will talk about the most improved student of the year. Everybody celebrates the best student of the year. Okay? Nobody celebrates the most improved student of the year. As long as we don't teach children that competition is never with others, why will you compete with Mukesh Ambani's son? You can only compete with your own previous self. So I think there are, and mine was not only book, there are quite a few others. We talk about failures and how you can learn from it to turn it into success.
All the planet failures. See, what my observation is that what I have observed is that you are most inspired by the books written by foreign authors or else the Western personalities. So I won't say Indian authors are lagging in any way, but my question is, what is the differentiator that the foreign authors make which better captures your imagination or peps up your spirit while going through it, reading it?
Great question. Yeah.
So there's a reason why I talk about foreign authors is because in English on accessible platforms like Kindle, there are only mainly foreign authors. The volume is much larger. And because of the forum that it is, I did not say this, but my favorite biography to read is from Lord Shiva. If you take away the religion angle from it, and I'm not talking about religion at all, just to be very clear, it's probably the best thing you can read on society, living life in a principled way, and how to deal with challenges in life with whatever powers and resources you have. I also read a lot about the Vedas and the science behind the Vedas, again keeping religion out of it. History of India in different forms, from Ramchandra Guha to other authors. So it's not that Indian authors are lacking or India does not have the same sort of history and culture that you can read, but a lot of it is not in English and a lot of it is not accessible.
My sense is that if you're talking about business, there is a bias, right? I mean, Indian business is only really a business after 1991, right? I mean, prior to 1991, they didn't have clients, they had hostages. Who gives a damn about regulatory arbitrage? And bribing is an unskilled job, right? So after 1991 is when we have real business people, and you will see more business biographies now. If you talk about non-business, I mean, there's a whole world out there. The biography of Patel by Raj Mohan Gandhi, the biography of Gandhi by Ram. the biography of Nehru by S. Gopal. I mean, we can go on and on, but since the topic was business, there's not many businessmen to admire before 1991. I mean, we may be biased, but obviously there may be people before that, you know, Jamshedji Tata and X and Y, but you know, from 1947 to 1991, Indian business was a wasteland, right? So, and I think there's another one which, you know, one of the most interesting essays I've read about this particular subject, which both of you ask, is Ram's "Why Don't South Asians Write Good Biographies?" I think there's a sort of broader explanation. Do you want to comment on that? I think that because he's thought about this specific subject.
That's a perfect. I wrote an essay which Manish refers to, where I itemize 7 or 8 reasons why Indians don't write good biographies. One is that we are largely Hindus, and why memorialize a dead person because he's already been reborn, right, as something else. So there's no such thing as a discrete, finite life. The second reason, of course, which doesn't apply in the IIM and maybe no longer applies in our universities, is that most Indian historians and literary figures were Marxists. And Marxists also underplay the individual life because it's all about class and state. But there are many other reasons. I mean, we're very careless about documents. Our monsoonal climate takes care of, even what we preserve. And there are incredibly thin-skinned and touchy and humorless people. So you can't, that's why you get the hagiographies that Manish talks about, and though this is changing, I want to say something about, someone mentioned unsuccessful people. I think some of the most interesting biographies are not of huge celebrities. They're about people in between. For example, a book on N.R. Narayan Murthy's secretary A.G. Pandu would be fantastic. Now, I am now working on second volume of Gandhi biography. And a person much more important than Nehru or Patel to Gandhi was the secretary of Mahadev Desai. Much more important. Right? Now, and you may have people who are kind of, social activists. A book on Ela Bhatt, for example, whom Raghu knows well. What it would tell you about modern Gujarat and the failures of the Gandhian movement and its reinvention. So the best biographies don't have to be about Steve Jobs and the Sam. They can be about modest entrepreneurs. I mean, and this is a plug for our next session with Anil Gupta. Anil Gupta's book is all about, unsung innovators. But there is an issue, to write good biographies, you have to be ruthless not only about the person you're writing about, but about your culture and its deficiencies. And it's no accident that the British write the best biographies. I mean, you mentioned, Mukesh, Franklin and Wright brothers. Now, you see, the American biography is celebratory. It's not hagiographical. Let's say a little bit about their mischief and the fact that Jefferson may have kept slaves and so on. But essentially, it is not really analytical and critical. The best biographies are those by the British because they can mock at themselves. I mean, from their politicians downward, from Winston Churchill onwards. So it's it's a very difficult art, but I want to say one last thing. I've spoken too much. And one point that Mukesh made was absolutely correct. You should, the person must be dead before you can write about him or her. I think Isaacson had to wait for Steve Jobs to die. And somebody will do an even better job 10 years later or 20 years later after Steve Jobs is dead. That distance is very important. I think that's absolutely critical. And I find it deeply dismaying that some of the genuine business icons, post-91 business icons, want to have lives written about them while they're alive. I find it appalling. I mean, it's kind of vanity which is, I can't understand. And I would just add one other point that we may be reading more of Western authors than Indian authors. See, with the Indian authors, you somehow, you do read willy-nilly the daily press, the magazines, you see the news. There is this false sense of feeling that you understand it largely. So that the novelty value is lesser when you talk about Reliance story. Everybody has a strong view on Reliance, and somebody writing a book on Dhirubhai Ambani, you are prejudging it anyway and so on. Whereas our knowledge about the international businesses is relatively lower. And they are obviously mega, When you talk about a $7 billion company in India, you talk about a $120 billion company there. So I think it's all that fancy work that also gets people.
Just a couple of more sentences on this. I think it's a fascinating question. I know one always wonders, such a big country, so many people and all that. But I think this also boils down to what I think business will call top of the funnel problem, right? I think especially Flipkart, Flipkart started as a book business. But you look at the entire book industry, my numbers may be wrong, but they're ballpark, order of magnitude, right? Book industry is probably 500-600 crores. In India, about $100 million. In US, it's in the order of $20-25 billion. So that's what, 1:200 ratio or something. So it's just that, you have a much, much bigger market, which attracts so many people. So, in books, it's I don't know, for probably every 100 books are written, probably one is what most of us get to hear about, read about, recommend to other people and so on. So I think as a country, we are far from, having that culture where enough people are reading the books, which is, making a market bigger. So a lot more people, I'm sure there are a lot of, I think as Manish mentioned, there's no difference between, let's say average Indian and average American. But if, for every one Indian who writes a book, there are 100 people in America or UK writing. It's natural, right? Some of them will rise to the top and become more popular. It's like entrepreneurship, right? If in India, 10 years ago, maybe, 10 people were trying entrepreneurship, and today thousands of people are trying. So again, top of the funnel is much bigger, and we'll see, world-class company come out of that over the next 5-10 years.
I could be wrong, please correct me. One of the things you have to factor in is that as a country we have a deep and long oral tradition as well. So it's not like the stories aren't there and they aren't told. Many of my early memories are actually, everyone has, your grandparents telling you stories, your parents telling you stories. So we do have a deep oral tradition as well. The same stories do get told. It's not like they don't get told at all. Writing is relatively perhaps newer.
Yeah. Yes. Any business book recommendation for 14 to 18-year-olds which will help them get some kind of
I don't think 14 to 18-year-olds should read business books.
They should be kids. The young kids.
This is a very, very personal question.
You want this?
Take a minute.
It's like I'm an avid reader of books. I read a book while changing classes. If we have a class in another book, on the way, my head is inside a book. So, but
do you have friends?
Huh? Yeah, I do have. So I have this small problem which I face. It's like the last week I read a book on platform revolution, and then I read this book called Innovator's Dilemma. As you read the book, I'm sure all readers here will resonate with me that it builds inside you, right? You have so much of content in your head. You're so inspired, but then we don't really get to vent it out anywhere. There are no enough intellectuals around to actually discuss it in the level that we would like to do it. What do you guys do? In busy schedules, you find time reading in planes. How do you vent it out?
I can tell you one thing. What our friend Manish does, and he's been doing it for the last 1 year or so, he invites some amazing authors to his residence. He invites, for lack of any other words, he uses the word intellectuals. I suppose, though I'm also there, so I don't know if that thing stands. But he calls a lot of book readers primarily. They discuss the book a lot at leisure, and so he does something like that. Okay, or I go to his office for a chat, and we talk about, okay, what have you read latest and so on. We do that. But you say reading, I also believe it's like a company investing in marketing. If you invest in marketing, it doesn't mean your revenue will be double next year. But if you didn't invest in marketing at all, 3 years later it will start showing. Reading is exactly like that. So your reading is not for tomorrow suddenly to get some kind of a gratification, intellectual or otherwise, or knowledge or problem solving and so on. It's an investment that you are making for the long haul. Okay? Exactly like marketing or R&D and stuff. So I think that's one thing you want to keep in mind. Yeah, please.
So I think with technology the way it is, you can start writing blogs actually. Just start writing blogs about what you've read and what you got out of it. or make personal diaries, whichever. If you want to tell it to the public, then write a blog. Otherwise, just write personal diaries. Just like Sahil said, he writes reviews. That's very easy. I mean, you will find satisfaction and completion in having read the book and written it.
And if it's a good book, you'll be doing the author a favor. If you put it on Amazon or something, people only write nasty comments, never good ones. Okay? Yeah. Yes. I'd like to ask questions. Yeah.
I'd like to ask 3 questions. The first one is, how fast can you read, or how fast do we read? And the reason I ask this is, there are crises where if you read faster, you face more countries and then you can read more books.
A little louder. How fast do you read?
Yeah. Now, there are books which you can read very fast, but there are some of them which you don't have, you cannot read because every word is like very difficult and you need to look for dictionary. Now, the reason behind this is some books are like less telling, some books are like telling more. Now, there are people who read very fast, but when it comes to talking, the talking doesn't become very effective. And there are guys, there are people who can talk. Every sentence seems to be so much of telling, and there is so much of information. I think there are instances when I heard Ramchandra Guha, where I feel like every sentence has got a lot of information to take. My next question is, if English wasn't introduced in India, somewhere around 1800, maybe second quarter, where Macaulay was trying to introduce English in India, he had said that there were a lot of books in India, like Vedas and all this, which are thousands of years, but they were in Sanskrit, and then they were, I think it was, of course, Sanskrit and Persian language, which used to be the medium of education. If we didn't have English introduced then, what would have happened? I think it's more of this speculation, what would have happened.
Okay.
And the third one is,
sorry, how many do you have?
Yeah.
Because there's somebody else there.
Sure. Last one is, all the stories that we hear is like from already successful. Now what I mean by successful, the family is already successful into something else. So the build-up of what someone is going to do is actually, starting very early at the age, very early. But for those people who are less privileged, it comes very much late. So the thing is that now there are stories like Benjamin Franklin. I'm sure he has been mentioned twice, thrice, or maybe more. Can you suggest some books who didn't have anything? It is like a story of rags to riches. Can you suggest any books who are kind of similar level like Benjamin Franklin? Thank you.
Okay, question 1, Sahil, question 2, Manish, question 3. The first question was, what he was trying to say is, how fast do you read?
It depends on the context. I typically read 2 lines at a time. But for instance, you can't read the introduction. Yeah, you can't read the introduction to algorithms the way you would read a Jack Reacher novel. You should read them at very different speeds. But if I'm reading fiction or if I'm reading a book which is not technical, then typically 2 lines at a time.
But they say the more knowledge you have about the subject, the faster you read. If you know a lot of European history, you read a European history book faster than others. So obviously, reading begets reading faster.
Also, just quickly, as you read more, the way the brain is wired is that you can form the context by reading the words quickly. You don't actually have to read the entire sentence.
That's what all fast readers say. Yo, I am applauding readers. Yeah.
Germans should look to find ways to minimize risks or to be able to counter them. It was entirely understandable, for example, that assurances and agreements should be Germans should look to find ways to minimize risks or to be able to counter them.
That goes from 100% of the ability of the phone. I can listen to it faster, but the phone has a limitation. The first speed was when I'm very comfortable with the subject, like Sahil said or Raghu said. And the last bit that I showed you is when the subject is totally new or I want to really focus on understanding what it says and I need more brain cells. So the speeding rate varies according to the book.
Wonderful.
No, I'll talk on the English one, as you said, the second one. See, English is a complicated question. I don't know what your counterfactual of what if English hadn't come, I don't know. But, you know, for us, to my mind, and I'm talking from what I do, you know, English is a vocational skill. You know, a migrant from the Northeast gets 20,000 rupees a month with me, while a migrant from UP Bihar gets 7,000 rupees a month. English is like Windows, it's an operating system, right? And whenever we talk about English in India, it's about being bilingual. I think it's a complicated subject, but remember Harivansh Rai Bachchan and Firaq Gorakhpuri, the two most interesting poets of Urdu and Hindi, were professors of English literature. So I'm not sure that this... And Ananthamurthy was also a professor of English literature. So my sense is that this English question tends to be very emotional, tends to be complicated, but you know, English is like Windows, it's an operating system. We could pick another one. Let's not invest it with more than what it is.
What was your third question? To recommend a book of a story which is like Benjamin Franklin type, from rags to riches. From humble beginning
Rags to riches stories. What book do you recommend?
As the crow flies.
Cain and Abel. All right, that's one last question. I may allow one more question. I have 4 minutes.
This one?
Yeah. 6 minutes.
Good morning, sir. Sorry. Good morning, sir. So, sir, I have 2 questions for you, which pertain to how technology and digitization has invaded our private and social lives. So the first question is about the medium of reading that we use. So now we have the Kindle, which has electronic ink and very long battery lives. So which actually helps us when we are traveling, as you have already mentioned about it. So my question is, would you prefer reading in a Kindle or an actual book? Because that is question of debate among the book lovers a lot.
It's already been answered.
And my second question is, would you rather be a reader who is connected while you're reading? Say you're reading in a Kindle, you're connected to the cloud, and you can update your progress at whatever you're reading, or rather you'd like to read in isolation to enjoy the book?
Yeah, I think both are pretty subjective answer. I don't think it's all really depends on who you are and your personality, right? So I think, as we already said, I think some of us, are 100% paper book and 100% Kindle. Personally, on the second question, when I'm reading a book, it's like, when you're watching a movie, you're typically not also talking to somebody on phone or updating your social status, right? So for me, reading a book is whether it's for 5-minute duration or for an hour, is to just it's also a bit meditative, right? You escape from whatever is happening from your world and you jump into a very different world, right? And so there is, in addition to whatever learning information, I think that just sense of peace and detached from is also, I think, profoundly helpful. So I would, not be distracted with anything else while reading a book.
I'll just add something about the difference between Kindle and a physical book, because I'm more of a physical book person. This happened in IIM Calcutta where I was studying. There was a marketing case going on, and the professor asked, what is the difference between a digital watch and an analog watch? What is the defining difference? So all kinds of answers which kept coming, till one of them said, in an analog watch, you know how much time is left, whereas you need to do some computation in a digital watch. To me, in a physical book, it's the same thing. I know I'm more than halfway through by looking at the bulk, which I don't get to know unless I do some mathematical computation. Anyway, one last question. Yes, Mr. Okay. Yes, sir.
So my question is on the learning orientation of adults. Recently, my new interest in books and technology around reading is, what do you feel in India as a learning orientation of adults? I did a recent survey and I got some really strange answers. So I'd like to hear this panel talk about it.
But can we expand what you
Yeah, the learning orientation of adults is like we invest in, say, training or going back, reskilling, and various other things, right? Now, you would read you will have a certain reading diversity if you had a certain learning orientation. From your experience, from Indian adults, what do you see as a learning orientation?
How much are we keen to learn further? How much are we willing to invest in ourselves for the long haul? I think that's the question.
Let me just qualify it by one more thing.
Yes, sir.
That we also have a lot of learning choices today. We have proctored, non-proctored, and books are a great space to go and learn experientially.
Go to coursera.com. Yes, sure.
But I would still like to understand what you feel about the learning orientation.
More informed people here.
I don't understand the question. Are you saying Indian orientation or adult orientation? But Indians are not, I mean, anything, cultural explanations for reading are at best the soft bigotry of low expectations and adverse racism. So please, there's nothing wrong with Indians, there's nothing ever has. Yes, I'm happy to say. Yeah, let's drop the India part. Then let's talk about adult learning, right? Adult learning is a complicated. Yeah. Adult learning is a more complicated question, right? I mean, do adults need to learn? What is adult learner motivation? That's true all over the world. Adults learn in different ways than kids. Adult learns when they have motivations. At least from my vantage in vocational training, repair, prepare, and upgrade is a continuum, and you repair yourself sometimes when you see the upside. With the wage premium, prepare is when is the circumstances that you're in, and upgrade is when you need the certificate. So, I mean, I can break this down for you very granularly, but I mean, adult learning is different from kids' learnings, and there's nothing Indian about learning or not.
Thank you. I might have to say thanks for whoever does it. Thank you very much. I think it's been
value creation without a market.
There's a small
Value creation.